Hey everybody, I'm back with another movie spoiler review, and today I'll be covering Tick Tick Boom, starring Andrew Garfield, directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Screenplay by Steven Levinson. It also stars Alexandra Shipp as Susan Wilson, uh, Robin De Jesus as Michael, Vanessa Hudgens as Carissa Johnson, Joshua Henry as Roger Bart, Jonathan Mark Sherman as Ira Wiltzman, uh, Michelle J. Rodriguez, Ben Levy Ross as she plays as Michelle plays Carolyn, Ben Levy Ross as Freddie, Judith Light as Rosa Stevens, and Bradley Whitford as Stephen Sondheim. And Stephen Sondheim has like a vocal cameo as as himself on an answer machine. And this is pretty much like a biopic in a way. I don't even know if you want to classify it as a biopic, but it's pretty much a life around the songwriter, what is a songwriter, a playwriter of Jonathan Larson, who you may not know is the creator of the Broadway show Rent. And I remember Rent being like a huge deal when I was a little kid, because it was like around 1995. Uh, 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 Somewhere between 1992 and 1995. Let me look this up. I swear it was like, it's definitely early 90s, isn't it? Yeah, it was like 1993 when it was first appeared in like a New York theater workshop. But then by 1996, it moved to a larger theater, Broadway theater. So yeah, like technically 1993. And is pretty much like a set around like during like the AIDS crisis in like the 90s. And God, I mean, like I didn't watch this movie right away because it was released on Netflix. I don't even know if it was released on, no, it was only on Netflix. And people been mentioning how great this movie is, and it's like giving us such critical acclaim. And I'm not like a huge musical guy like that. And I've seen certain biopics growing up, but I'm not a huge like biopic person. It's got to be like a very distinct individual that might have some kind of interest in that probably even pique my interest of trying to check out the biopic. But I think it was early last year or late in the previous year when I eventually, I'm pretty sure it was like 2021, that I eventually watched Tick Tick Boom for the first time. And this, for this review, it'll probably be my fifth time seeing it, because I actually like, wow, this is like a really, really good movie. I love the performance of everybody involved. I love the music involved in this. And for a good period of time, I was sitting there humming to the lyrics and everything like that. My favorite being in the certain part of the film that I probably the least is the cliche third act breakup situation. uh uh crap, what is that song? Because I don't know what the, let me check the soundtrack. um uh I don't know. Let me look up on the phone, like, you know, like tick tick boom, I feel, because it sounds like I feel bad that you feel bad about, I feel bad about that thing. It's like, it's it. Yeah, it's therapy. That's called therapy. Okay, and that's probably my favorite song. Um, uh, well, let's cover like the. Oh, I probably should do that last. The historical accuracy. But anyway, so we in 1992, Jonathan Larson is trying to find. He's pretty much kind of like writer's block or song block, because he's, making this uh uh trying to, this story called Superbia. This project, passion project of his called Superbia, and he's struggling to try to find like the song for the second act. um and he just can't not find like, you know the right words. He's like literally on his computer, he's just typing your Y-O-U-R or your Y-O-U apostrophe E-R, and he's just stuck on that. And you know it's funny because like people point out in the film that like you make, songs out of fun, out of something as basic as cereal, and somehow it's like you cannot come up with like a decent uh song for this part. And it's hard for me to, I don't say it's hard for, like, I can relate. And when you watch this, if you're creative in any capacity when it comes to, acting or stage play or writing, art, or voice acting, like, any in that vein, when you watch this movie, you cannot help but relate when you're trying to break through in, that industry. Not that you want just to be fame and money, but just like you want your work to be recognized, on a grand scale, and hoping to like get more, funding to do what you love. And it's just like that's probably why I just probably gravitated so much. So, um, he's like a week away from turning 30, and he mentions about his idol Stephen Sondheim being, having his first play to be shown en masse by the time he was 27. And he's kind of like he has like a particular goal, and he's kind of feeling like, discouraged that he's, is like, because all the people that he know that's into like theater, in the theater world, all had pretty much like not given up, but by and large, decide to, because they're not in their 20s no more. They need to find like, stable jobs. This is that kind of song and dance with a lot of people in like the arts, where it's like, because the whole starving artist, thing, where it's like until you make it big, it's like you're gonna be struggling to like, trying to pay bills and everything like that, while trying at the same time work on your craft, you know is kind of like, you know, obviously a good idea to have like a stable day job to pay bills, make sure this thing's done, and on your downtime make the time to, you know, to reach your craft. But Jonathan Larson is, you know, so like, you know, no, oh, Superb is going to be like a huge deal. I just, you know, got to black out all this other stuff because he's like, because like his friend Michael is the one that usually his roommate constantly to be the one to remind him about paying certain bills, and he's moving into like a better apartment, and it's another great song in the midst of that. And he's getting his advertising job, and his girlfriend Susan is teaching at this dance studio, and she's been trying to like sit him down to try to actually have a conversation about moving out to the Berkshires, you know, this potential job there, so he can still, you know, kind of like writing jingles or something like that, and it's, you know, but it's just that's not the same to him, and it's not necessarily like you know, he feels like he's, well, maybe in his point of view, maybe he feels like he's given up if he goes down that route, but he wanted to push through forward, and it's like I said, by using those kind of arts, you can relate. It's not like a hobby to him. So he's having a party in his apartment, and I gotta mention this idiot that's at this party is invited by another friend that knows John, and it's like, you know, I love going to parties like this. They always get, you know, like performers always got the best drugs. Yeah, it's like, shut up. Like, who invited this idiot? That's what I'm thinking about. It's like, God, it's just like, I kind of wish they cut this part out. Why is it in here? It didn't serve anything. He's no antagonist. He's not really an antagonist in this at all, which is, you know, I usually find this, you know, very, you know, relieving when I see movies like this. Like Moana doesn't really have a villain per se. I'm struggling to think of any other films. There's other films out there that doesn't really have a big time villain. I guess you could say many Christmas Carol films, technically those ghosts aren't villains. You know, they're trying to teach them a lesson. There's no, even Scrooge, just, you know, he's just like a bitter old man. He doesn't necessarily make him a villain per se. But you know, John is just pretty much like procrastinating for the most part in making a decision with his girlfriend, which, you know, if I would have done this on February during like the, you know, Valentine's Day month, I wanted to point out this particular relationship where John and people in relations like John, where it's like you have a great person as a partner. I can clearly see you two, you know, get married and stuff like that. And of course, if you know the story of Jonathan Larson, you know that never happened. But it's like, you know, it's like you're at that point where you probably could be considering marriage with this person. As you easily say that it could probably been together at a time for a good 3 years or so, and obviously you should be having serious talk. You know, clearly she wants to have a serious conversation with you about this thing. And it's hard for guys to be honest with girls, because like there's, you know, more often than not there's usually kind of like blowback, but if we are respectful towards each other, if you take the time to listen to each other's points of view, it's like John has to be honest, and she has to accept that his whatever honesty he comes out of his mouth, and not attack. Because once somebody's attacked, the other will defend, and there goes into a dangerous cycle of fighting. If he's hesitant on it and she needs like an answer in a couple of days, if he's like on the fence, just say you're on the fence about it. It's like, I'm not sure about that. Or if you're adamant on like, no, just tell her no. It's like, I don't want to do that. I want to push forward with this because I see this panning out. And it's like I don't feel comfortable personally in doing this. And then she can say whatever rebuttal she has respectfully and have a decent back and forth. And yeah, I get it. He's on like a crunch time and trying to figure out this song, but he could just at least set an hour. And it's not too much to ask. Being how much he loves this woman is not too much to ask. To set an hour of time between each other to have this discussion. He's 24 hours a day, and like, of course, you got the Moondance diner thing that he works as like a day job. But when he's not doing that, set an hour of time, talk with your girl, and say your piece. Be open and honest with it, respectful about it, and she has to be open to hear whatever answer that comes to it, and not attack him for being honest and having those feelings. So he goes to these workshops, one of which has Stephen Sondheim showing up, and his other dude, I forgot the actor's name because he's in like he's a character actor in a lot of stuff, especially I seen him stuff in like in the 80s and early 90s and stuff like that. It's like, God, it's like, what is that guy's name? He's with like because I love Bradley Whitford, especially his role in Brooklyn Nine-Nine as like Jake Peralta's dad. He is so funny. Richard Kind, that was it. He, playing as like Walter Bloom, head of the musical theater workshop, and he's like, like, oh, I didn't like this. This character seems a little blasé to me. And then Stephen Sondheim was like, no, I actually like that. Like, oh yes, we're saying the exact same thing, but different aspects. It's like, shut up. It's like, I don't know how many people have to deal with somebody like that. Like, hopefully I never have to deal with anybody like that. But it's just like, oh my God, the level of smugness. It's like those kind of things, like those who can't do teach kind of thing. And he, I can't imagine him teaching anything. But Sondheim gives John like some advice, which kind of uplift his spirits and give him that, as he mentioned, gives him that extra oomph to push forward. This kind of reminds me when I went to C2E2 in Chicago last year, and I met with Steve Bloom and got like a autograph and a picture with him, and I told him how I've been studying like voice acting, this like the thing I really want to like pursue and like I push for it and everything like that. And I mentioned how like my personal regret is that I didn't come to this epiphany way back when I was in like high school and everything like that, when like I could have just been like on that kind of grind from the jump. But he mentioned to me that don't let that discourage you, because like I didn't get into this field and until I was in my 40s. So don't let that bother you. Just keep on doing what you're doing. If you're really into it, just keep on acting and auditioning and everything like that, and like something will eventually pan out. And like John, that gave me like those words from one of my idols. It's like it's like it lights fire in your belly, to borrow a line from Fairy Tales. It lights a fire in your belly. And It's kind of like, can you imagine somebody like, you're working hard to be a professional basketball player, and like LeBron James gives you some words of wisdom, and it's like that level of encouragement from an idol is just like that is everything. Somebody that you respect to a big degree, that is everything to a person. So he's pushing through this and trying to like go try to figure out a song, but he's like got all this other stuff going around that like really like should be his focus, but it's like at the same time he is like shoving it to the side. Like this is during like the AIDS crisis, and like one of his friends that worked with him at the Moondance Diner is in the hospital for HIV, and he mentioned about how like he'd been to a few funerals from people that he knew that died from HIV. And of course, at the time, it's not necessarily a cure now, but we now have a way to avoid potential deaths en masse from people with HIV. Back then in the 90s, especially in the 80s, that was like rampant. That was even not even something to mitigate that. It's just like, at that time it was like 50-50 kind of situation. I'm not sure. I was if not an infant or just like a little kid that wasn't privy to that. It was like way back in 1992. I was like I was like 3 or 4 years old at the time. So like all that wasn't in my zeitgeist. It was around the same time this whole situation with like the first big news story kind of thing that really jumped out at me when I was so young, that it was the whole OJ Simpson white Bronco thing, because I remember distinctly that was on the news, and like driving on a high-speed chase. It wasn't sticking out to me. I knew that was like a big deal because it was like a news thing and everybody was glued to the TV, but I wasn't like that interested. I noticed, but that was probably the first big kind of news story that kind of like stuck with me, despite me being a little kid. I remember that. But the next big news story after that I remember, that I was actually more, old enough to absorb, was the 9/11 situation. So there's like a big gap in between that time. But, that was the only time that I was, that was the first time I was old enough to actually absorb a serious news story situation that affected, people globally, or at least nationwide. But obviously the whole world was kind of like rocked after that whole situation. But yeah, the whole AIDS thing, I imagine my parents and their generation, or even my eldest cousins that were like at least 5, 6, 7 years older than me, was a lot more familiar with how big of a deal the AIDS crisis was back in the 90s. They was probably in middle school at the time, so they wasn't have to deal with it themselves, because like who in middle school was like having sex. But I'm pretty sure they were still familiar with how big of a deal that party was. So now, like, he's, John is trying to get enough money for his workshop, but because he needs, more critical, he needs a piano. That's a must. But he also need, extra musical instruments for the band and everything like that. So he has to sell a lot of his like records and like go to this thing his friend Michael set up from, like what do you call those things, focus group in order to get enough money to get like, because he's mentioned to it producer that he knows, Ira, that he needs more people in order to make the music work, even though like Ira thinks that, oh, you only have like like 20 to 30 people coming in, you wouldn't need that many musical instruments. John disagrees, strongly disagrees. But since Ira isn't offering any more money, so he has to like fit the bill for all the instruments that he does not have already. So I mean, Ira, gives the piano, but everything else, John has to scramble enough money for. And of course, the music, after he does get the money to afford like the extra bandmates, it all sounds fantastic. And I was like, oh my God, you were right. And John was like, yeah, I know. And I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, you tell him, because like how you gonna tell the guy who's setting all this up that he might not need anymore? Sure, yeah, you're a producer, but it's like you gotta trust the artist that if he needs more people to make the song work, then you're gonna need more people. Anyway, or these more instruments. Anyway, at the focus group, it is at that point where it's like a tug of war with John's feelings towards want to pursue with writing plays and everything like that, and find like a stable job to have, and be with his girl and everything like that, to having assured money rather than hopefully money kind of situation. But one, you'll probably end up living with like regrets because you're not pursuing your passion kind of situation. It's a tug of war. It always happens with a lot of artists. So he's in this focus group, and they're selling this junk thing where it's like kind of like junk they was selling. I'm not sure, might not that much. Yeah, probably is still now, but probably, who knows, probably even worse, where it's selling this junk where it's like, oh, there's a certain side effects like hair loss and bladder control, blah blah blah. It's like, and these idiots in the other idiots in the room was like, it doesn't seem that bad. Yeah, it's like, shut up, just shut up, all y'all idiots. Oh, how you be okay with this? He's bleeding totally. Got you might go to the hospital in one of these things. And I was like, yeah, shut up, idiot. You act like you're deaf all of a sudden. But John was on a roll as he's like, oh, hey, I'm going to name some words. I'm going to say some words, and you'll say what comes to mind. And she points out like America, and somebody said like apple pie, or the other person say baseball. And John, which is, I love the way Andrew Garfield delivered this line. It's like, driving down on a sunset with the wind in your hair, something like that. The way he delivered it seems like it's just like almost hits that lady who's running the focus group, hits her soul in a way. It's like, oh my God, Mr. Larson. I think she just got turned on or something. I don't know. But it is Andrew Garfield, so who knows? He probably did. But before that, he's in his head, because a lot of stuff is like in John's head. It's like, what do you say about America? Like, poverty, racism, all the negative stuff that's really true. But then he starts like, this could be my life. I could be paid to be creative. And it's like assured money and everything like that. But then he sees how like the focus group and what is selling, and how corporate it is, that squishes any type of creativity at a certain point. And so he kind of like, you know, disrupts that, which upsets Michael. And they have like a fight. And he points out to John, it's like, you know, you have like a wonderful woman, you know, that you're squandering, and I can't even have that. And John is like, what's stopping you? And he names all the stuff that was going on during the 90s, where it's like, you know, the homosexual community could not, the same-sex marriages was not allowed. At that time, you still had no, yeah, like it was like, I think the start of the whole don't ask, don't tell kind of situation, and a lot of stuff that was baby stuff, but baby steps until we get to a certain point by, you know, today's standards. But it's still like a slow process of progress. But it was still like not good enough for the homosexual community. And you also got the fear of the whole AIDS epidemic, and a lot of people dying from that. It's you learn later that, you know, Michael also attracted HIV. He's positive, and this happens. You know, John ends up finding out after the workshop, which, by the way, goes off without a hitch. And Sondheim even showed up, and the music there is like superb, yeah. And of course, it's like his father asked him, it's like, you know, his parents show up and his father asks, like, you know, are you getting paid for this, son? Like, no, Dad. Of course, the parents always got to ask that, especially the fathers. But so what happens next? Well, his manager was the manager, John's manager. Jonathan's agent, played by Judith Light, was based on the real life person Flora Roberts. Just had like a real conversation with John, where it's like, you know, nobody picked up, you know, Superb, even though everybody loved it, like nobody picked up, you know, like, like for the rights to bring it to like a Broadway or anything like that, which of course discourages heavily John, where he goes running into Michael's office screaming like, I will go do any focus group, I'll do any, you know, advertising thing. And he's like, and Michael tells him, no, you keep on going, because what you did was amazing. And John is breaking down, and it's like, I feel like I'm wasting my life. Like I wasted the last, like, you know, several years working on this, and I don't want to waste any more, you know, for a chance, because like like it's just like for a chance for something to come out. And it's because the way the manager or agent states to him, the same kind of, almost to the same degree as my voice acting teacher explained to my class a few years ago, is that the main part of the job, I'm not sure how much true it is for, like, you know, playwriters, but the main part of the job is, you know, you keep auditioning, and even if you land a job, you keep auditioning, because auditioning part is the bulk of the work. And that's why you maintain like your day job, so they can be able to pay bills, your day life and stuff like that. But you keep on going. Even if you land something, you keep on going. And I imagine, you know, that's kind of thing that John's kind of like, unlike probably actors, you know, probably play and songwriters and directors, it's like you gotta you know, it probably would take long because you can't just whip up a new play because it takes some time. You can't just do it within like a fortnight. So Michael tells him that you keep on going, and he tells him about him being HIV positive. And so you had this cool musical number from Andrew Garfield, you know, reminiscing about his life growing up with Michael because they're childhood friends. And it's like, you know, and they reconcile. We want to make sure he be there for his friend. But then it's his day of his birthday. He got an answer machine message left by Stephen Sondheim, the actual Stephen Sondheim, mentioning about Superbia, and he, you know, wants to talk to John about it and probably wants to do something with it. And of course, at that time, John is celebrating his birthday with his friends at the Moondance Diner. He doesn't get back with Susan, unfortunately, but they, you know, part ways amicably, and she even gives him like a birthday gift, which is like a new musical sheet book. And then the movie ends with the narrator, I suspect it was Susan, or at least the person who's supposed to be, I guess, his girlfriend. I'm not sure. When I first saw it, I assumed it was Susan, but it's mentioned about how, like, you know, he worked on Tick Tick Boom. John then worked on the play Rent, which eventually got picked up, but John, like at least a day before it was, you know, supposed to come out, John died of a brain aneurysm, which is very sad because I can imagine this guy would have been as big as Stephen Sondheim, like easily the next Stephen Sondheim of the 90s. And of course, the play Rent was dedicated to Jonathan Larson. As a matter of fact, if you watch the TV show The Flash, the actor who plays Joe West was in the movie. I don't know sure about the actual play, but the movie Rent. I remember the movie Rent coming out, and it was like a big deal for everybody when I was in like middle school or something like that. I don't know. It was like I imagine it was middle school or early high school, but I remember the movie Rent was like a huge deal for a lot of people. Everybody was talking about it, how much they loved it. I never got into it like that because I'm not that big into musicals. But yeah, it's like, oh yeah, he was in the movie Rent. So we'll go over the historical inaccuracies because biopics usually have those. But I love this movie, and it's like highly encourage you guys check it out on Netflix because still on Netflix. It's like really good, and the music is phenomenal. And like every actor involved did an amazing job. I cannot find, other than maybe like the guy that was like in that workshop with Stephen Sondheim. Other than that guy, you know, I did not care for him. And like that idiot guest at the party in the beginning of the film that was invited by another friend of Jonathan. Other than those two, which I think you could easily, well, you could take out that guy at the party and wouldn't miss nothing. But those two are the only ones I did not care for in this entire film. And personally, if they cut out entirely, they wouldn't mean nothing. But anyway, one of the historical inaccuracies, or in historical accuracy, like Stephen Sondheim was actually Larson's mentor for some time prior to the Superbia presentation. Their correspondence began when Larson sent Sondheim a letter in college, and Sondheim responded. Sondheim had even invited Larson to observe rehearsals for the original Broadway production of Into the Woods in 1987. Matt O'Grady, the inspiration of Michael, was never actually Larson's roommate and was never involved in the performing arts even as they were growing up. The musical theater workshop scenes are based on Larson's presentations of material from Superbia from 1985 to 1986. at the ASCAP Foundation Musical Theater Workshop in November and December of 1985, and at the Dramatists Guild in April 1986. Sondheim was a panelist at the workshop alongside Peter Stone, Tony Tanner, Nancy Ford, and Charles Strouse. The panel at the Dramatists Guild performance included Sondheim, Stone, John Kander, Martin Charnin, and Stephen Schwartz, who cameos as an aspiring composer in the scene in the film based on these panels. According to the 2018 Oral History Boho Days, the wider works of Jonathan Larson, Sondheim was one of the few panelists across the presentations who consistently praised Superbia. Walter Bloom, played by Richard Kind, appears to be the film's stand-in for the negative feedback Larson received during this period. And that's why I feel like maybe you couldn't cut him out, because he is essential, but that other dude at the party really wasn't essential at all. Like, the Superbia Playwrights Horizons Workshop, produced by Ira Weitzman and directed by R.J. Cutler, actually took place on December 19th, 1988, the year of my birth. Larson's disappointment in the workshop went beyond a lack of offers for production. Rather than the rock band or even the synthesizer he wanted, the workshop only had standard piano accompaniment, and the musical theater trained cast had difficulty with the energy of Larson's rock score. Though Sondheim did come to support his pupil, he left after the first act. The film implies Larson stopped developing Superbia after the failed Playwrights Horizons presentation. He actually continued work on it for some years afterwards, including a screenplay adaptation in 1990 and a reading at the Public Theater in 1991. He had ceased further development on it by the 1992 New York NYTW staging of Tick, Tick, Boom due to focusing on Rent. Janet Charleston, the inspiration for Susan, did not fully break up with Larson. Rather, the character's actions and motivations over the course of the original monologues development were based on changes in the pair's on-again, off-again relationship. In fact, the two were still together at the time of Larson's death. So those are the historical accuracies going on. But Tick, Tick, Boom. It's like a really fun movie. The musical numbers, like I said, like it's very rare for me to enjoy a musical of any kind. I mean, aside from like Disney stuff, it's very rare that I actually enjoy musicals. But this one is actually a big banger, and I love like Andrew Garfield and the actress who plays Susan are my favorites personally in this entire film. Vanessa Hudgens. I don't know why I can't remember her freaking name. Not Vanessa Hudgens. Alexandra Shipp. Those two are my favorites out of this entire film. Even though everybody else did a fantastic job, these two, their performance throughout this entire film has been like just superb, like just like phenomenal work. But anyway, if you've seen Tick, Tick, Boom, let me know in the comments below what you thought of the film, which one of Jonathan Larson's works that you personally have a love for. And if you haven't seen it, please check it out. It's on Netflix. Highly recommend it. And I will see you guys in a little bit tonight as I try to wrap up Fire Emblem Engage, because I gotta get back to Hogwarts Legacy and get to that, because RE4 remake is gonna be coming out a week from now, and I need to make sure like I put in some time for that. But anyway, I will see you all soon. Hopefully in an hour or so. But if not, I'll see you guys for the next movie review. It's gonna be two together in one again. Well, maybe not again, because the next because I'm going to review John Wick Chapter 4, R.I.P. Like on the poor man's name, he just passed away. Just found out today, Lance Reddick, because he just passed away today, earlier today, natural causes, I believe. But it's just a shame. He was an amazing actor, but and incredible voice actor. He did a lot of stuff. Incredible character actor. But I'll be reviewing John Wick Chapter 4 next Saturday. But next Thursday, I will be reviewing Emperor's New Groove for next Thursday. So look out for those. Anyway, excuse me. In the meantime, I will see you guys later. So take care and have a great evening. Peace.